Hi, my name's Carol Ricard, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I am really super excited because I have a special guest that's coming on the show with me. And well, I'm going to bring her on and then I'll tell you how I actually came to meet her. So, Meg McQuarrie, welcome to the I Am Not Cancer show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, how I met you was this past summer in the Cancer Thriving and Surviving workshop that you had actually put on, and just kind of got to be a little bit familiar with you and just wanted you to come on. And so the mission of the show is to really inspire, to inform, and empower people. And you have an interesting story, and I love having people on whose lives have just been touched by cancer. And I wondered if you could just start with us. Before cancer came into your life, what was that like for you?
Well, before cancer came into my life, I was in a completely different realm. I was teaching at a community college in environmental science, and then my brother was diagnosed with advanced testicular cancer, and that just sort of changed the whole trajectory for me.
It's interesting, because here you were kind of off in this other different orbit, and then all of a sudden kind of got pulled into this one. Is your brother, was he older, younger?
So I'm the youngest of four children. And so I have three older brothers, and my brother was the middle of the three brothers, so older than I am. And he was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 36. And at that time, I'm from New Jersey, but we were both living in California. So I was the closest family member to him and able to be part of the day-to-day of his treatment.
Wow. So it was actually the two of you were out in California?
Yes. Yeah. We were, the two, and I had just moved to his town about 8 months before he was diagnosed, and I lived just half a mile away. So it was a blessing that that had all worked out and that I was able to be there.
Yeah, I did. I actually grew up in California.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
I grew up right outside Yosemite National Park.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. People often say, what are you doing in New Jersey?
New Jersey has its pluses too.
Oh my goodness. I came out here to be a caregiver, though, for my mom back in 1987, and I fell in love with the state. And so
it happens.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I love about Princeton TV is that, we actually have viewers that really live all over the place because it's live streamed. And so I love just that we can kind of, reach out to different, parts. What was that like for you, though, being the family member, and what were some of the struggles, the challenges, but then also the more blessings that might have been hidden?
Absolutely. For me, I never really described myself as my brother's caregiver. He led the charge in all of his treatment and his decisions. We were there to support. But being able to be part of the day-to-day and be able to take him to treatment and support him and just be there was an incredible blessing for me. The challenges were that I still had to maintain a full-time job. So we were fortunate that we could work most of his treatment around that. I really didn't miss work, but you still have to move forward with your life. And I could not put that on hold. But the blessings were that largely we were so lucky. My brother was very hesitant to seek treatment in the beginning. I think because he was afraid of being sick, and very much as basic as didn't want to be nauseous. And that sounds a little petty, but he had seen people go through treatment and he thought, it seems rough and that's not something I want to do. But when he was diagnosed, and it was very advanced by the time he was diagnosed, it had already spread to the organs and to the bones. Once he started treatment, he really found it was a different story than what he thought, and he really handled the treatment well. So for me, I was able to be part of the day-to-day, but we also had the heightened awareness of how precious the time was together and time with friends and family. So that I really look back on the time when he was going through treatment, and there were a lot of memories made, a lot of laughs, a lot of living that was done. And that was a huge, huge blessing for me.
I loved your brother's approach to his chemotherapy. Could you share that with folks? Because I think, we hear the horror stories. Maybe we know people that have gone through that. And truthfully, I went through chemo and I did not have, the experience that I sort of kind of heard other people's experiences have. And I think it's so important, but I loved mostly his mindset.
Yes. And my brother was very resistant to treatment. And even once he decided to try it, it still had a negative connotation. So he decided, someone encouraged him to think of his chemotherapy as liquid light. And he decided to call it his Elixir and put a positive spin. But not only did he call it that, he asked his doctor and the nurses to call it that. So they would come in and say, okay, we're going to start your chemotherapy. And he would say, my Elixir. And that just lasted for the first few weeks until he kind of wrapped his mind around it. But he was insistent that we all approach it that way. And his best friend, who couldn't be with him at the start of his treatment, she sent T-shirts for everybody, doctors, nurses, friends, family. And that was, so I now run an organization called the Elixir Fund, which came out of this experience. But that was the genesis, and our original logo was life, light, light, and healing. Life, light, love, and healing, Elixir. And we had these T-shirts that we wore, and he wore it at the start of chemotherapy, and that just set the tone. He wanted to be positive. He didn't see his cancer as a battle or a fight. That didn't resonate with him. He saw himself as living with it, and he didn't want it to dominate his life. It was part of his life. And that was the whole philosophy. And he found that way of thinking and having friends and family that provided support and comfort really made a difference in how he felt, and he could address each step and really take that head on.
Yeah, what I loved about it is it so resonated with mine, because, one of the things I wrote about in my book, because I had advantage 30 years of teaching stress management in hospitals. So I had a huge advantage going into this whole diagnosis. And as a person living in recovery with mental health condition too, I just sort of have lived what I taught. But I call it the survivor's mindset. And it's focusing on wellness, and for me, it was healing, kind of this mindset of, are you a fighter or are you a healer? And I just decided that I wanted that energy kind of not leaving me, but coming to me. And it sounds like with your brother too, it was really about, not fighting, but living. And I love I love all of that, because I think that is so critical. I had guardian angels, and the two of them gave me the same advice. One, a functional medicine doctor, the other, a certified music therapist, both 20-year survivors of breast cancer. And the first words they said to me were, Carol, it's the most important thing is your mindset.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your brother, kind of just adapted that.
Absolutely. And he had done meditation before. He was a massage therapist. He had studied all sorts of different types of integrative therapies. But like you said, you have this survivorship mentality, but you're really putting that to the test with a cancer diagnosis. So while you may have, lived your life previously and put all these things into play, you really need to rely on that at a time like this. And it does test your ability. It's not easy to stay positive, and everything is set up to make it difficult to stay positive. And even our wording, that it's a battle, that it's a fight, that's exhausting. Survivorship, that works for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. And so I think you really need to carve out what terminology works for you, and share that with people. And again, my brother was insistent that we call it that. And once he made peace, it sort of eased up a little bit, but he was very much not about the fight or the battle. And he truly saw cancer. He would also say it was the greatest gift in really ugly wrapping, but he really did see the benefits of it. And it was just part of his story.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I loved it. He was a massage therapist too, though, because he did have that exposure to all of that other sort of integrative. And, and I know that that's something that you too, still to this very day, try to do with the Elixir Fund, and just really kind of educating people around what is out there. Can you talk a little bit about the Elixir Fund and really how that came to be?
Absolutely. When my brother was going through treatment, he was treated between an inner city hospital in downtown Los Angeles and City of Hope, which is a premier cancer center in Pasadena, California. So the dichotomy of the two places and what was available was striking. But regardless, he found that it was his support network that really provided him lifted his spirits and allowed him to move forward with each step and with each setback in his treatment. So while he was going through treatment, we talked about wanting to pay forward all that he had received. And we talked about creating the Elixir Fund to do that. So the basic premise of the Elixir Fund from day one has just been allowing people, finding ways to help people take a break from their cancer. So when you're diagnosed, as you probably know, it becomes the primary focus. It is part of your thinking constantly. And my brother found that even just being able to sit and watch a funny movie allowed him to take a break for a couple hours, or being able to meditate for 5 minutes. Just being able to tune out the cancer for a little bit allowed him to keep moving forward. And so we wanted to find ways to do that. And the Elixir Fund has just shifted and evolved over time to try and keep meeting that mission. When we first came to be, multimedia, DVD players, entertainment in hospitals weren't as accessible as they are now. So one of our first things we did was just try and get DVD players to patients and a library of movies that they had access to, because TV was limited. But over time, that's evolved. That's much more accessible. We've also tried to connect people in a variety of ways with integrative therapies that he found so helpful, but I also, as a caregiver, found helpful. I started taking yoga when he was in treatment, and I literally was able to just walk across the street and do a yoga class for an hour and then come home. So I could carve out that time for myself to just shut off my brain and take a break. And that helped me tremendously. So we've tried to find different ways to provide that. And one thing we do is I lead a guided meditation online every Thursday night that's available to everyone. So we just do about 20, 25 minutes of guided meditation. And it's just a nice way to kind of introduce people to these modalities that they may have heard of, but never got around to trying, if it's not part of your life. But they're so helpful when you're going through treatment or when you're supporting someone who's in treatment.
Yeah, I think your point is so important too, though, because it's how do you then also take care of yourself when you're supporting somebody, and that and it sounds like your brother was, sort of his background and his training and who he was, sort of kind of just opened him up to that sort of, approach.
Absolutely. And it was critical for me, and he was supportive of that, but it was critical for me to just take a break and release the stress while we were going through it, however that might be. Again, just 5 minutes of meditation, an hour of yoga, because it is a long process. So there's going to be many steps. You can't just keep plowing through, and you're no good to the person that you're trying to support if you burn out or if you don't take care of yourself. And so many times the caregivers say, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine." You're not fine. You have to find a way to do, even if it's go grab a cup of coffee. And so many times you feel like you can't take a break because you have to be there for every little thing. You've got to find a way for just, and I tell people, even if it's just sitting down and really enjoying, if you're a coffee drinker, if you're a tea drinker, whatever it is you do to start your day, even if you just take 5 minutes to really just enjoy that cup of coffee, smell it, drink it, taste it, just take those couple minutes and not multitask, not look at other things, just really be in the moment, even for just a minute.
Well, I think it's, what you're talking about is really just practicing some mindfulness and just being present with your coffee, for just this moment. And kind of, what I imagine when you were describing, being that support person in the long haul, I was imagining you're running a marathon,
Yeah, absolutely.
And you had no water breaks along the way. Like,
absolutely. Exactly.
You just aren't going to get to the end of the marathon without taking those water breaks along the way, because your body and your mind and just, you need that self-care.
Absolutely. It is extremely important, and it's important to find an outlet. It's important to find someone to talk to, whether it be a friend, whether it be a professional, and it's important to ask for help. So that's also one of the things that we try and help people or encourage people to do, is just write down a list of things that maybe people could help you with, so that when someone says, "How can I help?" you have something to refer to and you can give them an answer. As simple as, could you bring my garbage cans in? Could you, drop off a casserole? Could you, help drive my kids to school? Have a list, because people do want to help. And usually the person going through treatment has one caregiver that they rely on, and the two of them are a team, and it's really hard to support that team. You develop a shorthand, and it's hard to let other people in because things may just not go as smoothly. It's uncomfortable, but it's really important to find the things that you can delegate and let go of, so that you can take a break.
Well, and I think what you said is so important too, and that is, don't wait until people ask, because then your brain sort of goes blank.
Exactly.
But kind of just think about it ahead of time. And, and I think you bring up another really important point, is that if you need help, it's okay to ask for it as well, besides just accepting what somebody wants to offer.
Absolutely. And specific ways that people can help. The other thing that we have is a very simple, the Elixir Fund registry, and you can create, you can post links to e-gift cards for things like meals, grocery cards, gas gift cards, anything that can be done in an electronic gift card. You create the list with the links, and then when people say, "How can I help?" just share that list, and they can make that purchase for you. But you don't have to tell them. You don't have to feel uncomfortable that you're asking for too much. They can choose what they're able to help you with. And this is great too for when, invariably, when you go through this, the people that you think are your tried and true friends just don't know what to say. So sometimes they disappear. But here's a way, just point them to the registry and they can send you a gift card, and they don't have to find the right words, but they can stay in your life and they can show you that they care without having to have those conversations they don't know how to have.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a wonderful, safer way, for people to just want to help. But again, like you said, don't know what to say to you. I mean, for me, cancer's been a part of my life since a little girl. I lost my dad when I was 14 to lung cancer. And, actually did not deal with it very well back then. I was stealing alcohol from my parents. And, that the kind of, I call those the quick fixes. Those are the survival tools. And, it's really just kind of, for me, I felt like that was my whole life's purpose, was giving people the tools to be able to manage in a healthy way. And I love, just really all the things that you've been a part of, because there's just so much. And I've come to really appreciate how much the Elixir even supports, and partners with other organizations. Like to do the meditation you do on Thursday nights is sort of, with the Sand Hills Wellness Center, and
Mhm.
even partnering with the Cancer Thriving and Surviving. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that is such an incredible program that I don't think a lot of people know about.
No, and this is a national program. So Cancer Thriving and Surviving was originally developed at Stanford. It's an evidence-based program. It's a 6-week program. You meet, depending, now we meet in a virtual environment or in person. So 2 to 2.5 hours each week for 6 weeks, which can be a large time commitment for people. Rather than a traditional support group, it's more of I say, guided support group. We have specific topics that we talk about, but then as a group, we also brainstorm. So maybe we'll talk about fatigue, and we'll talk about what are some ways that different people manage their fatigue. So we also talk about communication with family members, with your healthcare workers. We talk about nutrition and exercise. So it's a lot of the issues that both the person in treatment and their caregiver may face. The side effects of treatment, whether they be short-term, long-term, if you're just starting treatment, if you're in treatment, if you're out of treatment, maybe you've been out of treatment for years. A lot of these things are still issues. Scan anxiety comes up a lot with the people who participate in this group. So it's a 6-week session that is an interactive guided session. It is offered nationally, so you can look that up, the Cancer Thriving and Surviving. There's a few other programs, chronic disease, self-management, diabetes. So there's some that are part of the same group of programs. So I offer this in cooperation with Hunterdon Mercer Regional Chronic Disease Coalition in New Jersey. The state has a program for a cancer control plan, and this is part of that mission to help reduce the impact of cancer in the state. So this is one program that we do.
And that was, how I came to meet you, because I had actually signed up for that maybe a year ago with Robert Wood Johnson, and then the course ended up being canceled. And I was really disappointed, because I really was looking forward to it. And I will tell everybody, it is definitely worth the time. I learned, I know a lot, but I got to tell you what, I loved what I learned, during the workshop. And in fact, some of one of the greatest tools I remember walking away with was even the decision-making tool.
Yes.
And really, I've shared that honestly with other people as well, because it just was incredible. But I will say this, the resource, that also that comes along with it, just was really incredible.
I'm glad to hear that. And a few people have mentioned that the book there's a companion book that follows along. Well, it covers the same topics that we discuss, and people have found it a really helpful resource to refer to.
I think of it as a toolbox for people, really. And that was really how it's presented, is as this toolbox of these different tools. And I think the fact that it's, mind, body, emotional, spiritual,
There's a little bit of something for everybody, or there's things that that may resonate with you and other things may not. And each week we also do the action planning, which I think the participants really appreciate. And you just set down a manageable goal for that week and really dwindle it down to something that's manageable and you can build off of. And that seems to be a really popular.
Yes, it is. And actually, I found it to be quite helpful, and able to get back to doing things that I just got too busy to do. Like, I mean, I loved puzzles, and I had not done one in so long, or my meditation, or even some of the ones that came out of our session where it was just, all right, drinking water,
Right.
and setting an intention to just nourish your body somehow. Um, no. And I will say this, you two were just a fantastic
Thank you.
group of facilitators, and just sort of kind of, I think of it as just the synergism, that
We
just,
really enjoy working together, and it just, for us, so I work with Bonnie Petrowskis from the Hunterdon Mercer Regional Chronic Disease Coalition, and for us it just clicked from the beginning, and it's worked really well. And I'll say, because of the pandemic, we had to shift to an online format. When we can, we'll get back to offering both in person and virtual. But our last in-person group met in 2019, and there were 17 people. And from that, somewhere between 6 to 8 of the participants still meet on a monthly basis on their own. They decided to continue meeting. And they have been a support for each other since 2019. They just got together for lunch recently, so we were able to see them. But it's a really wonderful program. And as I said, it's a little different from a traditional support group because it's a little more guided. And that was something my brother was hesitant to do. He said, I don't want to do a support group. I feel like when I journal, or I remember everything so vividly, and I don't want to remember every moment of my cancer treatment vividly. And I don't want to sit around and talk about it. I want to take a break from it. And I think the wonderful thing about Cancer Thriving and Surviving is there are specific topics, and there are guided conversations, which help to kind of, I think it allows people, and you can say if this is true, I think it allows people to express their concerns and their emotions, but it also helps keep a little bit out of some of the ruts that can happen, and it's more supportive.
Yeah, no, I think it, I think of it as, in a structured way, and really kind of creating some, I always called, them lines in the road, where you just don't kind of get lost, but it just really is sort of focused, and, but yet giving people the opportunity to share some of the struggles and challenges and concerns.
Exactly.
But I think the thing I also loved about it was very solution focused, and very empowering for the person, and
Great to hear. That's great to hear.
yeah, and and I'm like I think so highly of it, man, and I like to think I'm a critical person, because I just really believe that the more we can empower people to be able to kind of manage their health and their wellness in whichever way they choose to do that is just so wonderful. Yeah. Well, I hate to tell you this, but we've run out of time. I mean, I told you it goes by so fast. Well, if people wanted to learn more about the Elixir Fund, or, get in touch with you, how could they do that?
We are online at elixirfund.org, and we spell that ELIXIR. So elixirfund.org. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And you can also just reach out to me simply at meg@elixirfund.org.
Well, thank you so much for, joining us and just sharing so much with us tonight. And those of you tuning into the show, tune in, to the next one, come back and see, because our goal is to just keep kind of providing this information, inspiration, and really empowerment. So with that, thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you so much for having me on.